Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to learn about something that you might find very unique, and that is the idea that we can kind of look into our mind, body, and spirit and find out and discover health problems, pain and disease, as well as disorders, unhappiness, and addictions that may lie beneath the surface that we may not be aware of. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a nurse who has worked in the area of healthcare for many years, including assisted living, skilled nursing, cardiology, and home health. She's also a certified life transition coach. She's going to be talking with us today about how you can intuitively discover those things that lie beneath the surface. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest who's going to talk to us how to heal physical and emotional blocks, Ms. Diane Dennis. Ms. Dennis, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Oh, thank you, Daniel, for having me. I so appreciate it, and it's good to talk to you.
You bet. What a treat, too. Now, I understand that you actually studied under Carolyn Myss. That's a pretty big name there when it comes to health and healing.
Yes, she had a program, and it didn't last very long, but she has archived video webinars for helping other people get in touch with learning how to be an intuitive, medical intuitive. And the thing is that I already had this skill. I had just been hiding it. And I brought it out, for friends and family only, thinking it was my best kept secret. But it just kept growing, and my skills kept getting better. So I thought I'd, see what was out there in terms of getting some training to just go to the next level.
And I think today's world, people want to have a lot of certainty when it comes to their health, and certainly when you're sitting there with a doctor and he's asking you or she's asking you questions about your health, trying to get to what it is. When you think about something like intuition, I guess a curious question would be how your intuition comes to you about someone's health, things like inflammation or congestion in a person's body. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, so this is how it started, and this is how it's expanded. In the beginning, my friends would call me because if you're a nurse, you're always a nurse, and I haven't been working in the clinical field for a long time. I'm a publicist, really, for the last 10 years. So, but still, people call, and it starts out like this. Well, you're a nurse, and I've got this problem. So I'd ask 2 or 3 questions, and then, whether it's at that moment that I'm on the phone or walking through, an office space an hour or 2 later, I would literally hear a voice that would give me an answer. And sometimes I didn't even know what it meant. I'd have to Google it. And so, I would tell them my findings and always, suggest they go to see their medical practitioner, but at least, it's somewhere to start looking. And so then I thought, well, maybe I better really practice this and see what I can do with it. And so I just would close my eyes and look at someone that I know, and I would see kind of a cloud around a certain organ area, and that's individually. We collectively all have some things that are kind of true to our environment and our, industrialized, country we're living in and, around the world, and our lifestyle as well as foods we eat. So, if you take the average, let's just say American, this is probably a worldwide radio show, right, Daniel?
Right.
Yeah. So I am here in the U.S., and so we do have a problem with obesity, and we do have a problem with stress. Everywhere you turn, you'll see an article about stress. And I really started to break that down and try to figure out why. And since I'm a nurse, I can tell where I can see the congestion, but I can also tell what organ it's attached to, and then I can kind of go from there. Because in traditional Western medicine, we don't understand that there's a mind-body-spirit connection. Or some of us may understand it, but medicine isn't practiced that way. It separates out body parts, and it separates out mind from body and spirit. So I can oftentimes, and since I know that they're all connected by Candace Pert, the brilliant scientist, she was in What the Bleep Do We Know, and she wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotion. And she defined in the Petri dish, she showed how our emotion affect our organs and our hormonal responses. So when I put all that science together with my intuition, I can get pretty close to understanding what a person is going through physically and how it can tie back to their emotional being and how we can make that shift.
Now, the body tends to have a huge capacity, to be able to absorb a lot of what goes on in our lives. And a lot of times we overlook, the littlest things. But tell us, what does it take for someone to get out of balance with their health?
So there's a couple of general things that almost everyone can take advantage of in this talk, and that is most of us, because of the a diet that we're all on, and our environment, our soil being stripped of nutrients, and the environment being unclean, and a lot of GMOs, just everything contributing to that we are, and especially the foods we eat, we are in an acidic condition. So what we want to do is alkalize our body. So that's called that's the pH balance. And it sounds really complicated, but it's easy to break down, where you just want to eat alkalizing foods and avoid too much acidic. Because acidic, if you're in a state of acidic, if you're a diabetic, it's called metabolic acidosis. So you're spilling too much sugar, which is acidic, into your body, which can wreak damage and havoc if you don't get treatment for it. So this acidic state we're always in, the body's beautifully always trying to rebalance ourselves, but it gets more difficult, and the body can only do what the body can do. But if we keep putting imbalance into it, it's kind of an uphill battle. So alkalizing foods would be kombucha, vinegar, apple cider vinegar, fermented foods. Acidic foods would be, anything high in sugar, and acidic drinks that we know about, which would be alcohol and coffee. So it's okay to have a couple cups of coffee or a couple glasses of wine. You just need to balance it out with being mindful that you need to alkalize your system to keep in good balance. That would be one place to start.
I had a guest on the program. This was probably a couple of years back, and we were talking about, for instance, cancer. And I brought up the idea of emotional health as the possibility that cancer could actually become manifest, exist. What I was surprised by this person was they said, no, there's no emotional component to it. And I thought to myself, what do? Just kind of cut this program off now? This guy's giving some bad vibes, because really when you think about it, if your emotions are off balance, then your body begins to physically get off balance. I mean, think how you feel when you're angry or you're depressed, things like that. So would it be fair to say that physical manifestation of health issues does start with an emotional root?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Daniel. I'm so pleased that you clarified it in that way. Here is how it works scientifically, and this is why it's so important. And so I hope people this is one big takeaway. Every thought you think, your body will create a response, a physical response to your thought that matches it. Very simple way to put it is fight or flight. Let's say you see a snake and you're afraid of snakes. So the first thing your body does, because of fear, it will express hormones which will help your body move through that fear, fight or flight. In other words, you see something, you're afraid, your body will literally produce steroids, and adrenaline is what it's called. Now, that adrenaline running through your body is to help you move fast to get away from that which you're afraid of. It does that automatically. You don't sit there and say, hey, body, turn on my adrenaline. All you have to do is become afraid. So this is where stress sits in, is we are sedentary individuals. We sit in front of our computers and do our work, and if we're afraid of something or angry, anger, a fear, all those emotions that will heighten our alert our body to be on hyper alert. All those things are producing adrenaline, but yet we're not burning it off. Like, animals in the forest, if they're afraid, they run. In the old days when we were afraid, we would get out of danger. Life was really simple. We would run, climb a tree. Now we sit, and it builds up and it builds up. So that is one very obvious body response.
Like I said, I was just surprised that here somebody was working in the medical field, and they said, no, there's no connection in that. And it's really surprises me to hear something like that.
Well, that's how we were all trained.
Mm-hmm.
We were trained that, and it goes back to the days of the great philosophers, René Descartes, I think his name is. He set up the medical system, and it hasn't changed. And how he set it up was the doctors will take care of the body, and the church, because the church was very powerful way back when, still is probably, the church will take care of the mind and spirit. So that's where where the separation between mind and body came in. And it's a great disservice to our humanity because there is not a separation. And once we get that, and Eastern modalities practitioners understand that. They understand that there's a balance in what is in the mind, and even a spiritual, you call it spiritual breakdown, or spiritual bankruptcy or something, where you're just separate from your body. And I think we have a lot of that going around with our technological world, because we're all in our heads looking at the computer, the media, the fear, where everything's words that are high drama, hyper alert. And so we're all in our head, and we're not really connected to our body. That's why people say, or practitioners say, go for a walk and meditate. Get in tune with yourself. Get in tune with your feelings. And we really need to get back to some of those just basic elemental pieces of being human.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also, when I'm thinking about this, I also have to consider the idea that we're emotionally sometimes tied to beliefs in such a way that this could also take an effect, too. It's also a way that we have trouble, accomplishing our deepest desires. What about that?
Yes. So in our formative years, we create beliefs. We have this super fabulous part of our brains minds called the ego. The ego keeps us safe, but it also prevents us from maybe reaching our biggest dreams and desires. And this is how it works. Formative years, we create a belief out of our early experiences to make sense of it so that we can understand how the world navigates. So here's a perfect example. A little girl is frightened by a big, mean person, and maybe it's a male in her world, like an uncle. Okay, so he scares her. So she develops a belief that some men are scary. Well, our minds don't know how to create nuances. They only know how to generalize. So that gets translated unconsciously into men are scary. And that can create a fear of men. And then we develop defense mechanisms like, don't get too close, or, I'm going to get out of here before I get hurt, or, just develops a separation. And maybe her biggest desire is, why can't I have a relationship? I want to be in love. And she doesn't have long-term relationships. I'm just drawing a picture, it could be anything, it could be financial. And so that unconscious belief, we have to go back and really examine what happened in early childhood. So take something that you really want. Let's say, I want financial success. Why is that always hard? Okay, go back into your formative years. What were the words or the things that were said or talked about or experiences that you had that created a belief? And I run these people through these workshops that we do this, and they're amazed that they think, oh my gosh, yeah, my parents were always saying, I'm a financial burden. Well, no wonder money is hard for me, that kind of thing.
Right.
So in order to change that belief, we need to go back and then with work, you have to do it more than just repeating a mantra, and that's where we get in trouble. We read the self-help books and we say, all I have to do is wake up every day and say, I am wealthy, I am prosperous, or, I am love. You have to integrate it into your body, and you have to believe it. So you have to create a new belief. And that's where, it takes some work. And I have some protocols that I have people go through that really shift their world. And it's helped me personally, so I'm a believer.
Mm-hmm. I was talking with a guest recently, and on that topic that you're talking about, here we've already talked about the emotional connection with people not being able to fulfill their desires, then the idea about their beliefs as well. And I would think that one of the ways a person can actually begin to explore that, as you were saying, this mantra that people believe they could just recite something over and over until they believe it. Well, the truth is the subconscious mind is much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And you realize that the best way to really put that into motion, to really discover, am I still stuck with these belief systems here, is to pay attention to the emotions that arise or fall, whatever the case may be, in situations that make you feel uncomfortable, and that's how you begin to work with it there, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. That's crazy. It's crazy to think about how simple that is. You wish somebody would have taught this in school.
Exactly. But, in school, our teachers were like our parents. They were busy helping us create beliefs that, so that we could be controlled and we would conform and fit into, the child that listened well and didn't ask questions and think outside the box. So it's kind of like, we have to fight against those places where we conformed to society and did what we were told, and so now, we're grown-ups, we have choices, and it's, I know, you're right. Why does it take a lifetime, right?
That's sort of, now we know what we wished we had known then kind of a thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Diane, I was also wondering, too, now I think this is really fascinating to talk about here, but do organs in the body and body systems hold particular emotional wounds?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. If you hold a lot of anger, and it's long-term anger, that will definitely, the liver seems to be where that is stuck. And it's interesting that the liver disease we have heard most about is cirrhosis of the liver, and that can be tied to alcoholism. And a lot of self-medicating through alcohol or other means is really just burying emotions. But the emotions never die. They get stored in the body. So it's really important to, to ask yourself, how am I feeling? Check in. How am I feeling? I'm angry. What am I angry about? Oh, why? What can I do about this? And, you go through the steps of decoding that feeling that you're having and then work through healing and forgiveness. And there's a lot of anger today, and underneath anger is fear. And, our culture is kind of set up for fear now that technology is throwing us information that is constantly fear-based. So, and, high drama. So long-term anger is stored in the liver, and short-term anger, this is going to, now don't laugh too hard, Daniel, but you know the term, I'm pissed off?
Right.
Urinary tract infections can be a result of an immediate anger, like you just have a burst of anger. And I'm not saying everyone's going to have a urinary tract infection because they have a burst of anger, but there are times when that is, very prevalent and very, astutely tied back to that. So what does it all mean? We all have different places in our body that are vulnerable because of let's call it, this sounds weird, but overuse of the same feelings that just keep running around. Like some people are generally angry, some people are generally depressed, some people are generally happy. We all have a range of emotions, but if we sort of hang on to one, then that can be stored that will be stored in the body for sure, and eventually manifest into disease or disorders. And this is just general, because everyone specifically has specific and even generational and ancestral places where they store things.
Yeah, it seems like there's so much to it, but as long as you start getting pointed in the right direction, it's amazing just how much clarity you can have in moving in the right direction. So,
yes.
Yeah, talk about, what are your thoughts about Western medicine and the business of medicine today?
Okay, Western medicine, sadly, has been hijacked by big corporation, big pharma. So I want to say that if I have an infection or I break a bone or I might have a disease, I am definitely going to go to a traditional Western practitioner to get it diagnosed. because I want to know what I have to work with. So the tools of Western medicine are very sophisticated and do a really good job of pinpointing where something has gone awry in your body. You know, the CT scans, MRIs, invaluable. Now, how we treat it, though, sometimes in Western medicine is so targeted to one area of disorder or disease, and the rest of the body isn't taken into consideration. So I think integrative medicine has done a wonderful job of pulling all of those things, all of those different disciplines together to treat the whole person for whatever the circumstances are appropriate for. And, you know, everyone has their own choices. So if something was wrong with me physically, I would go to a multiple, different sources. I would go to somebody who's very intuitive. I would go to a medical practitioner. I would go to, maybe Eastern practitioner. I would do my own research and put it all together, and then, with guidance, make the best choices, because it's not one thing that fits all. So, there's a place for Western medicine, but unfortunately medicine has become business, and even the medical practitioners, even though they went into the practice of medicine, have, they're heartfelt, they want to help, they're in it because their personality is wired to be, helpers. However, their hands can be tied with insurance companies, and I believe there's just too much pharmaceuticals being the answer for problems that then create more problems.
Yeah, it's just too many hands in the way telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing and taking away a lot of choices. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about 5 things everyone can do regularly in order to stay healthy.
Okay. These are going to sound simple, but in our culture, they are underutilized. One is movement. Movement keeps people alive. We have circulatory systems. We have the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. If those 2 areas get stuck or congested, they're going to develop some sort of a problem. So move. They even say sitting behind a desk for 8 hours is a killer. Every hour or 2, get up and do some kind of movement. The more you move, the better you are, and especially weight-bearing exercises will help prevent bones from getting thinner and weaker, and cardiovascular exercises will help keep your heart strong. So move. Water, I would recommend drinking alkalized water. You can get a higher pH balanced water. There's a lot of water machines out there that will purify your water. Not only purify it, a lot of our water has way too much chlorine, which is acidic. So I have been on well water for the last 20 years. So, and even that, I will make sure that it's alkaline and get it tested. So, alkaline water, movement, eat an alkalized diet as much as possible. Too much animal fat obviously causes, cardiovascular disease. And really be your own best practitioner. So, there's a over-prescribing of, in my opinion, of medicine. They're called statins for high cholesterol. Well, I think in a way the doctors don't trust us anymore to eat a clean diet. And if we did that, we wouldn't be needing the statins. If we, did a lot of movement, drank alkalized water, ate proper, foods that are alkalizing, not high in fat, that business would be out of business. So food is really essential, alkalize your body. And the 4th one is really work on your thoughts. Be a good manager of your mind. And that could be as simple as setting up boundaries and not being around toxic people. It could be listening to your inner self. Check in with your body, and because your body knows before your mind does. Isn't that wild? And if you start to really get connected with your body's going to be your best messenger. And I would practice mindfulness, meditation, yoga, any kind of mind, body, spirit connection in it, and get acupuncture. I'm in favor of massage, deep massage. So I would say those are a good 5 solid places to start, and will create a better balance in your life.
Seems so simple, but it certainly works, doesn't it?
Well, every day, people say, "How do you go to the gym every day?" And I say, "It's my medicine."
Mm-hmm.
And they say, "Why? Why is it?" Because I take my daily exercise as seriously as if I were a diabetic and needed insulin to live. And I know that once you tune your body to a higher frequency, you will miss those things that are really essential for you. So you're kind of training your body to be in better condition, and it will let you know if you're slipping up.
No doubt about that. I know just not too long ago I was watching, and I know a lot of people probably have Netflix now and streaming and so forth, but there was a wonderful documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman on cancer, and they were sharing how pretty much we all have cancer cells in our body. But when you start allowing things to slip, that's when they start taking hold and growing. And he says, but generally when you think about these couple of basic things, that if you just follow these, you're going to prevent pretty much most, if not all, cancers from happening, you know. Mm-hmm. And one of those things, as you mentioned, was movement, just moving around.
Mm-hmm. And so disease, which includes cancer, happens when your body is in an imbalance, and especially when it's in an imbalance of alkalinity and acidity. So when they're doing a CT scan to find cancer cells, you get an IV of high glucose, because they're like, if you imagine, remember the old game Pac-Man?
Right.
So cancer cells will be lit up and come alive because they're fed by sugar. So a lot of people who have cancer not only get cancer treatment through traditional Western means, but they cut out all sugars and start juicing, eating organic, and it's kind of like, well, maybe we should be doing that all along to prevent it. Wouldn't that be easier?
Absolutely. That's something that I started incorporating actually with quite a lot of regularity. In fact, it's pretty much almost breakfast every day is green smoothies, bust out that Vitamix or whatever the case is, and I'll usually use dark leafy greens like kales, things like that, and maybe a little bit of fruit just to sweeten it up a little bit, and things like that. And it doesn't take long before you start really feeling the effects of doing something like this. I mean, you find, like, one of the most obvious things is that your taste for certain things just kind of fall away, and you realize, you start psychologically even feeling like, I just don't really want that anymore because I already feel better, and I know I won't feel better if I go that direction.
Yes, exactly.
So,
yeah, I have a good one for a liver cleanse. They say that it is thought that we have a lot of heavy metals in our world around us, and that they do get stored in the body, in the liver, and that there's a great big body of thought that then those heavy metals will go up into the brain, causing dementia, Alzheimer's. So a very simple liver cleanse is juicing organic celery, and I did it. I've done it, and I'm so sensitive, so I'm probably outside the realm of the average human. But I felt within a half an hour after I drank some just organic celery juice, add some water to make it palatable, my liver twitched.
Wow.
And then the next day I was thirsty. And they say don't detox, do heavy metal detox too fast, because then you're going to loosen up all that stuff in your bloodstream and can be toxic. So just gently drink, they even say once a day or once a week, organic celery juice is a good detoxifier.
And, and also, as I was mentioning the kales, the dark leafy greens, those also do the same thing, I understand.
Yes, a lot of people are intolerant to kale, so I kind of don't generally, just because they can be kind of hard on some people's digestive system. But parsley, cilantro, and celery are 3 big detoxifiers, and kale if it is palatable with your system.
If you can handle it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, right on. Now, let's talk about relationships. What happens if one of the partners has unhealed emotional wounds? That can't be too easy, can it?
Right. Very good. I'm laughing because I did a huge study on this type of thing, on this topic. So if you have unhealed emotional wounds, as I mentioned before, you're going to develop defense mechanisms to protect you from that wound. Now, it's a double-edged sword, the unhealed wound. The unhealed wound, our spirit wants us to heal. So the unhealed wound will be a magnet to draw in experiences that expose that wound. Now, most people resist this, and this is what you'll hear people say. Why does this keep happening to me over and over again? I can't believe it. First, my dad was this way. Now I married a guy who's this way. Well, yeah, because it is your opportunity to heal, but most people feel a victim to the experiences. So if you look at what's rubbing you the wrong way in a relationship and really go into why is this so painful for me? Why am I angry? Or why do I keep pushing back? It's an opportunity for you to heal that. Now, I'm not talking about anyone, if there's abuse or substance abuse or any kind of abuse, that is just plain get out, right? So I'm not stay in a painful relationship. But those defense mechanisms that we develop will victimize others, and persecutor, the victim, the rescuer, all of those drama roles that we play that are prevalent in every single Walt Disney movie are all a part of unhealed wounds. So when you do your work, the good news is when you do your work, you will be open to more loving relationships. The bad news is when you do your work, you can't unlearn what you learn, and relationships that you've had that were tied into these drama roles will no longer serve you. And so sometimes we have to, move to different levels of relationship.
No doubt about that. And that's sometimes where the challenge comes, but the question is, are you happy about the direction your life is going now?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious how unhealed emotional wounds might show up in a person's life now that we're on this subject.
In a relationship?
Yes. Or just in general, maybe in a person's life.
Well, I think what happens is, or what I see, and we all have stuff that we're not even aware of, and it doesn't come to our awareness until it shows up in a way that sometimes brings us to our knees. That famous Oprah saying, first there's a whisper, then there's a knock, then you're knocked off your feet before you listen or start to investigate what's going on. So, a person with an unhealed wound is going to avoid things that will bring up that pain because we think the pain's going to kill us. So we naturally, unconsciously, won't do it. For instance, if we were told as children, don't do that, you'll get hurt, or you're not good enough, then we stop doing things that would risk us failing, which would prove our parents right. So we play it safe, stay in your own lane, so to speak. And in relationships, again, I see it's the controlling or defense mechanisms or the codependency, which is a really strong indicator that there's just some unhealed wounds that people are just playing out over and over in their adult life. And if it works, it works. No one's going to change anything unless they're in enough pain or discomfort, or they want something more. Their heart says, or their spirit says, I really want this. Why can't I get it? That's a place to start.
And it's great, too, to be able to follow yourself through this work as you're talking about, take notes, things like that, and just see what comes to you. It's amazing when you're silent how your body begins to talk to you in ways that when you listen, you just didn't even know they were there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's why they say get out in nature, just walk, and everything slows down.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Get life slowing down, and then that way you don't have to worry about too much of anything, do you?
Yeah, exactly.
Give me an example of someone that you might have worked with recently where you had some pretty big aha breakthroughs, at least as far as their experience was concerned.
Okay, so I have someone came over to dinner, and her throat is very sensitive, and so I made sure all the food was very bland because she coughs and chokes. And so I might have had a little salt and pepper and something, and she started to gag. And I said, "Wow, I made the food really bland." She goes, "I just have a sensitive throat." And I said, "Was there anything in your life in the past that where you couldn't express yourself?" Because when you can't, that's what, remember we were talking about before, whatever you hold in your body will develop some sort of sensitivity in that area.
And this is that sense where there was an emotional block in an organ or an area of the body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was her throat, and I said, was there sometime where you had to kind of put a gag on yourself where you couldn't speak what was going on? And the fact is I know this person who's very outspoken, and I thought, I don't think that can be true, but I'm going to keep digging. And she goes, "No, I can't think of anything." And then I said, well, I believe that for every physical manifestation, there is an emotional root. And she goes, "Well, I don't believe that." And I said, "Really?" And I kept persisting. There wasn't any time in your family or growing up or any time where you couldn't express yourself? She goes, "Well, yeah, when I was a child, my dad was a drunk, and we couldn't talk about it. We couldn't tell any of the neighbors. We had to be quiet and silent." And I said, I just thought, there we go.
It's pretty wild when you discover that. It's almost as though that just falls away, doesn't it?
It can if now I don't know to what level she embraced that, and I have a friend who's a psychic medium, and she was getting her throat problems, and I said, "Do you hold a lot of secrets?" And because she gives readings. And she says, "Well, yeah, there's a lot of things I see that I don't think the person's ready to hear." And I said, "I think you need to, after you do your readings, everything that you've held back, I think you should either write it down or say it out loud to get it out." It's like our body is a vessel. And, it's called the pain body. Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. It'll only handle so much pain before it rebels, either by developing some kind of a congestion or disorder or disease, or so yeah, yeah.
Now, just to let the listeners know, our guest here, Diane Dennis, is also the author of the book The Hourglass: How to Live as Time Flies By, and I understand that there's a current book in process now known as The Healing Matrix.
I am writing The Healing Matrix, and it's in the book. It's talking about and teaching the healing protocols, and it covers in much deeper, to a much deeper level, everything that we've been talking about today.
Well, it certainly is inspirational for people to hear what you have to say here and to certainly think about reaching out to you. And I'm kind of curious now, do people have to be locally? I know that you're located up in the Northwest, but do they have to be local for you to be able to work with them and help guide or coach them in the directions they want to go?
Yeah, no, I don't need to, much to my own surprise, I don't need to be in front of someone. Now, there are times if I feel like I'm not getting through, we can do a Zoom or Skype interview so I can really see the person, see who I'm talking to, because sometimes I can pick up more than what I'm listening to. But when I tap into my intuition, there aren't any boundaries over time and space. And thank you for asking. People can find me at medicalintuitivecoaching.com. medicalintuitivecoaching.com. Sounds like a great website to start, to discover, well, what are those beliefs that you're holding? What kind of emotional blocks could these beliefs be imposing on you? How do you set those things free so you can move forward and get the life that you want to? And you don't need to take an entire lifetime like a lot of us seem to be able to get to that place you'd like to be. Mm-hmm. Diane, thank you so much for being on the program today. And for our listeners, go ahead and give out your website one more time. Oh, awesome. medicalintuitivecoaching.com.
Very good. Diane, thank you so much for joining us here on Beyond 50.
Thank you, Daniel. Take care.
You too.
Okay, bye.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can also discover more by visiting us at beyond50radio.com. You'll discover some of our YouTube topics as well as a newsletter that we encourage you to sign up for so you can stay up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.